Okay, so in this one, I'm going to be continuing my series on the truth about One Punch Man, so please watch the other 3 videos that I've made so far. They'll give you way more insight into what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But when I was making my latest video about why people become monsters in One Punch Man, I reread chapter 119 of the webcomic because of the exposition that my mask gives about the history of the One Punch Man world. But little did I know, the actual most important part of this chapter is in the cold open. Something that I, and I'm sure many others, thought was just like a funny little throwaway scene, but it's actually one telling us the truth about the story but hiding it in plain sight. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that I've been saying this a lot. This is something that One does all the time. He's been doing it since the beginning of the series and he continues to do it now, but this is like the most blatant example I've found of it so far, and the most clever at the same time. So in the beginning of this chapter, Saitama randomly runs into this guy Ragnar, who says he's going to use the power of the blood dragon, but then after defeating him, he runs into these knight-looking dudes and they say, "Oh my god, you actually defeated one of the 9 warriors of the Dragon Alliance? The seal stone won't be taken, all thanks to you. The cruel dragon seal has been protected by the action of Saitama." And then Saitama just, writes this off, modestly and nonchalantly. He's like, no, I just came here because I heard about a robbery, which is basically what's going on in like the overall story. Like, Saitama doesn't actively know that he's taking down God and saving the world as a result. But going further, the knight is like, you did more than that. You saved the world. Even though this is a secret mission, it should be fine explaining the situation to our savior. So keep in mind, secret mission. As I said, what's going to be explained here is what's actually going on in the story with God, and not only him, but Blast and the monsters. And this secret mission is also why Blast's mission is always regarded as confidential or secret, or why he never really gives anyone insight into it. Even when Blast explains what he's doing to Saitama in Flashy Flash, he's very vague about it and says he just goes around and collecting these cubes. Obviously, Blast has way more insight into what's truly going on, but he can't tell outsiders, as we'll come to find out. But anyway, going further, the knight says, according to legend, a colossal dragon descended upon Earth and became the embodiment of destruction. It just took a few days and it took countless lives and scorched large swaths of land. This is of course talking about God, aka Osiris, coming to Earth, and him scorching large swaths of land is a metaphor for what he actually did with destroying the environment through his pollution and influence on mankind, with them becoming monsters, polluting the agriculture and the water, and forcing them into these wars. And like I said, we talked about this in my previous videos, so again, please check them out in case you're confused. But here's where it gets super interesting, because going further, he says, ancient soldiers gathered together with a great many sacrifices managed to weaken the cruel dragon. Seal Master separated the essence of the dragon using 9 seal stones and sealed them in 9 temples scattered across the land. So what do we see here? The cubes. Now, the cubes aren't really an aspect of the webcomic continuity, at least yet. Obviously, they are a big part of the manga's continuity, and this chapter came out before that stuff was revealed in the manga. So this goes to show us that the myth of Osiris is indeed an integral part of this portion of the story. Because as we talked about before, Osiris was tricked by Set and put into a box, then cut up into pieces, and then thrown into the Nile. And I speculated that's pretty much what was going on with God. He either had a brother of equal power, or there was like a council of aliens or something that came together and were able to put God into these cubes somehow, and then threw them out into space. And then eventually God made his way to Earth. And it turns out that that's pretty much the case. Now, as for them being 9, I don't know if that's like the literal number, because the story that's being told here is not the literal story, but it's more so just a rough retelling of what's actually going on. So the number could be more than that, but them being scattered to multiple temples is actually what we see going on in the main story as well. Remember how I talked about before, the main places where Blast shows up all resemble cubes. The ninja village, the Esper testing facility that he saved Tatsumaki from, those places had cubes, or at least was heavily implied to have one. And then of course, one of the other temples that housed these cubes was the Monster Association itself. You know for sure the Esper testing facility had a cube in it, because when Blast showed up there to save Tatsumaki, he had the cube in his hand. But as for the ninja village, I talked about how the ninja leader very likely made a deal with God and became one of his main disciples, which gave him access to the abilities that he has. That also gives an explanation as to why Blast showed up there in Sonic's flashback, and why he just had a beef with the ninja leader in the first place. There was a cube there and he was going after it. But going further into this exposition will make more sense of that. So he further says the duty of watching over the cruel dragon seals was passed down onto our branch known as Saint. saints. Those who believe themselves to be dragonborn and are plotting to resurrect the cruel dragon belong to an organization known as Deathbone. So this is it right here. This is Blast and his group versus God's disciples. So going further into this, I'm pretty sure the saints are representing, like I said, Blast and those other Blast type beings that we saw him go to when he said he wasn't fighting alone out there. These are all the good guys trying to get the cubes and protect them so that the other side can't. And then as for the other side, the Deathbone, pretty sure they represent like the ninja leader, whoever was in control of the Esper testing facility, Psychos and the Monster Association, Drive Knight and the organization. I mean, the organization is even name dropped here. Fuzzy controlling the Neo Heroes. And then I'm pretty sure the samurai who has the Moon Blade is a part of this. And then I'm sure there's like other characters that we're not even really aware of yet. Going further, he says this conflict surrounding the cruel dragon seals has continued for 800 years. Now that's another number that I think isn't exactly accurate because we know this goes back to Egyptian times and we don't have the exact timeline of the world in One Punch Man, but I'm assuming it goes back thousands and thousands of years, especially since we see a lot of Adam and Eve iconography within this story being told in both the webcomic and the manga. So continuing, he says Deathbone has amped up their activities to take advantage of the frequent monster incidents as of late, and we have been on high alert guarding the Seal Stone. So this is of course an analog to what's going on with the Monster Association and that whole arc. But anyway, one of these Deathbone members is there as well, and he starts talking to Saitama and he says, regardless, the day will eventually come. We will take all the Seal Stones and Lord Cruel Dragon will be resurrected. And then Saitama asks him, so when is this eventually? And then the Deathbone member's like, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 100? It's actually 6 months because of Shibawa's prophecy. Then he also says Lord Cruel Dragon has been quietly waiting for the seals to become weaker. In the off chance Deathbone is wiped out, those who inherit our will shall appear and realize the resurrection. Now that's super important there because he's saying like if they're all wiped out, like if the ninja leader, the organization, and Drive Knight, you know, whoever else, if they're all gone, there will eventually be born someone who will realize this, such as like a monster, because there will always be monsters born as long as God has his influence over like the agriculture, as well as the actions of men who are susceptible to his influence. But we also saw in chapter 115, once Orochi finally came to like his potential of power, it said he instinctually went to the core of the earth to drain it of its power. Going there, he was able to find the mural, which foretold of the resurrection of God, although Orochi mistakenly thought it was his own resurrection. And that comes into the differences between the webcomic continuity and the manga continuity. Obviously, we don't know everything about the cubes in the manga yet, and there hasn't been anything said about the cubes coming together to resurrect God. It was more so stated that if a worthy sacrifice is placed on an altar, i.e. Orochi, then God would be resurrected to the earth. But anyway, Saitama's like, if it's going to resurrect at some point, why not now? Then we literally see Saitama speedrun collecting the cubes while carrying the Deathbone member, while also defeating the 9 dragon warriors. But the last one that he runs into says, a new hero hired on by saints leaking our secret to outsiders is forbidden. And they even broke that. Do they have no self-esteem? Going back to what I was talking about with Blast not really telling anyone what's going on and why his mission is considered confidential. After Saitama defeats this guy, he gets the last cube and we see the location that they're at has like these hieroglyphics on it, similar to the hieroglyphics that we see in chapter 115 on the mural foretelling God's resurrection. But then Saitama gets all of the cubes together and resurrects the cruel dragon. And then the dragon's like, the hatred I have accumulated over the years will be repaid with the lives of humanity. And then when we get a close up on the dragon, his eyes look like moons, which is of course a callback to Osiris, aka God. And as he shoots like a beam at Saitama, similar to the power set of God or in the implied so one, Saitama defeats him with one punch. And this goes back to what I talked about in my previous videos with when it eventually comes down to Saitama facing God like 1v1 in a physical fight, it will be decided with one strike from Saitama. This is also shown to us again at another chapter in the manga, but I'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys. And if you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.